Finance, or The Fascinating Game of Finance or Finance and Fortune, is a board game originally released in 1932. The game is based on the Landlord's game in the movement of pieces around the board, the use of cards, properties that can be purchased, and houses that can be erected on them. The game also has railroads, however these may not be purchased. The game is actually a predecessor to Monopoly. Overview of game. The game begins with each player on cash here and $1,925. Players move again on doubles, and if a player lands on another player, the original player moves back 5 spaces and pays rent, follows directions, etc. Players may trade properties or sell them back to the bank, but may not mortgage property. If a player is unable to pay, all their property is returned to the bank, and the player is out. The game continues until only one player is left. History. Finance was created by Dan Lehman, who played with Louis Toon, Lewis and Fred's version of the auction Monopoly games that had been spawned from the Landlord's game at Williams College in Reading, Pennsylvania, with the Thunts wanting to patented their game, found the Landlord's game patent and only copyrighted their rule editions. With the Monopoly name and game then in the public domain, Lehman decided to call the game of Finance, with L.S. Ayres & Co., then Electronics Laboratories. Lyman published the game for a year before selling it to Napa Electric for $200. Initially, the game was sold in small black boxes with 4 different versions of the rules. Otherwise, it is almost identical to Monopoly, including chance and community chest cards. It is said that Lehman taught Ruth Hoskins, who moved to Atlantic City and played it there using local Atlantic City streets. One theory on the street names chosen is that these were the streets players lived on, with a couple of later changes of South Carolina to North Carolina and Arctic to Mediterranean. Pete Daggett Jr., a friend of Dan Lehman, actually taught Ruth Hoskins. Hoskins then moved to Atlantic City to teach school in 1932 and created the Atlantic City version in the late 1930s with her friends. Eugene and Ruth Rayford, friends of Hoskins, showed the game to Charles E. Todd, a hotel manager in Germantown, Pennsylvania. Todd introduced Charles and Esther Darrow to the game. The Darrows were occasional hotel guests. Esther was Todd's former neighbor, with Parker Brothers taking over for Darrow and publishing his Monopoly game in 1935. Parker Brothers purchased Finance from Napa for $10,000. Parker Brothers changed Finance so it was less similar to Monopoly and published it under the Finance Game Company name for 1935. Parker Brothers made additional changes in 1936 and published it with the Parker Brothers name. Fortune. During 1935, Parker Brothers was developing its own version of Monopoly, Fortune, in case its deal with Darrow and the patent fell through. Almost an exact copy of Monopoly, Fortune had only 10,000 copies made due to the deal with Darrow working out and only being published to keep the trademark to the name. Also in 1935, Finance outsells Monopoly, Finance and Fortune, with Parker Brothers wishing to hold on to the trademark on Fortune. The second version of Finance, by Parker Brothers, was named Finance and Fortune. With its 1958 edition, the game's name reverted to Finance as they developed a new marble game having the Fortune name. The last known version was printed in 1962. Known changes between the original and the Parker Brother editions. Removed community chest. Dropped colored property groups. Rent chart card replaced the property cards. Colored standard pawns changed to colored different shaped pawns. Properties renamed. Property purchase prices increased.